But don't listen to me. Here's what GM Brad Holmes had to say during his pre-draft press conference.
But at 7, we do have a cluster of players that we're comfortable with picking, but at the same time, we will be very prepared and, also willing to move, in either direction. But, so we're still open in those regards, but there are a cluster of players that we'd be comfortable with. There has been discussions with other teams. I will keep those in-house, but yeah, there has been discussions.
All right, Damien, what direction would you turn if you were Brad Holmes?
Well, Phil, listen, there's a glaring need for wide receiver with this Detroit Lions roster. They brought over Tyrell Williams and Brashad Perriman, but, those guys aren't number one type of receivers. And when you look at this draft, especially in the top half, you got some special talent in Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. They'll have an opportunity to get one of those guys at pick number 7.
The Panthers now have flexibility on their side after previously acquiring Sam Darnold in a trade, leaving them with plenty of options at pick number 8. Here's new GM Scott Fitterer.
Is there one specific quarterback that you feel like fits your team best out of those top 5 guys that everyone's talking about?
Yes.
Can you share?
No. There's actually several of them that we're excited about, just like there's several players, but we're not going to get into exactly who. We're very open to moving back. We're open to picking. It just depends on how the board falls, those first 7 picks in front of us.
All right, Matt, this is Scott Fitterer's first time on the clock as a GM. Any advice for him?
Yeah, look at what you guys didn't do in Seattle. Build an offensive line. It is very, very simple. We're going to say this a lot today. Build the offensive line. You're going to have a young quarterback there in Sam Darnold. This is what they did not do for him in New York. Whether it's Penei Sewell from Oregon, Rashawn Slater from Northwestern, one of those players will be there at number 8 overall.
All right, and right after the Panthers at number 8 is the Broncos at pick number 9. Another first-time GM making his draft debut. That's George Paton, who was hired by Denver this offseason and chimed in during his pre-draft press conference on the team's confidence in incumbent quarterback Drew Lock.
Yeah, I don't know about week 1. We're really high on Drew. I like seeing Drew here every morning when I come in. He's working hard. He's trending in the right direction. As you know, he has a lot of talent. I think he's becoming a better pro. But we're going to still look at the quarterback position. I've said since I got here, we want to bring in competition, and that's the goal. And we plan on doing that.
All right, so the Lions, Panthers, and Broncos, 7, 8, 9, may all decide to stand pat with the quarterbacks they have in place, but should they? Over the last 2 seasons, Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, and Drew Lock all rank amongst the 7 worst quarterbacks in the league in total QBR, making picks 7 through 9 very interesting as we inch closer to the draft. So, Mina, let's talk about this for a second. Should all 3 of these teams be at least considering taking a quarterback?
Yes, full stop, Field. Yes. I've been very vocal about Denver because unlike the other 2 teams, I think that team actually is a quarterback away from competing. The state of their roster is very strong. I think we've seen enough from Drew Lock to bring in some legitimate competition for them. But Carolina as well and the Lions, look, they traded for quarterbacks, but there's a reason why Jared Goff and Sam Darnold were traded. Yes, they did make an investment in them, less so with Sam Darnold. Jared Goff, they'd probably have to eat some dead money to move on from him after next year. But frankly, I don't care. Because if Justin Fields or Trey Lance fall to either of those teams, you draft them. I believe that wholeheartedly. This quarterback draft is significantly better than the next one. Everybody agrees on that. You might not get this chance again. And worst case scenario, let's say your reclamation project works. Sam Darnold is excellent in Carolina. Then you've got a terrific trade asset, in a quarterback you draft. We've seen that you're still able to get really good value for that. To me, that's smart GMing. Draft quarterbacks, see what you got, and then if you have to, trade them.
Listen, I agree with Mina. I think that if you don't think you got the right quarterback, you keep going after them until you do find the right quarterback. Now, I think with the Detroit Lions and the Carolina Panthers, do I think they'll draft a quarterback? No, but I do think spots 7 through 9 is the most intriguing spots in the draft because I think if one of these quarterbacks, whether it's a Trey Lance or Justin Fields, starts to slide, I think you could see a bunch of teams in the teens, or maybe even as far down as 20, try to maneuver their way up into that spot to go get their quarterback of the future.
Yeah, guys, and I think one thing, I agree with what you're saying. Next year's quarterback class does not look as good as this year's. But I do think that, especially with Sam Darnold, it's hard to evaluate him without offensive linemen who can protect him, especially on the left side. Taylor Motton's a good right tackle. And I would say with Jared Goff, with that wide receiver core they have, that's going to be very hard to evaluate what you have in Jared Goff with those wide receivers. So I do agree. Next year's class not as good. Maybe that would put some pressure on you to get a quarterback this year. But I do think the evaluation for Detroit and Carolina will be very difficult if they were to draft quarterbacks at 7 and 8 respectively and roll out Jared Goff and Sam Darnold with the roster they currently have. I know I constantly preach there's more than one round. You can get players in other rounds as well. But Detroit could be sitting there with Devontae Smith on the board. Carolina could be looking at Penei Sewell. These are really, really good prospects who are day one impact players. That would be, I know how important quarterback is. It would be very hard for me to take a quarterback after trading for a quarterback with those players on the board.
Man, knew I was going to say, yeah, but your quarterback is more important. And I was about to also say this as well, Matt. You know what you got in Jared Goff, man. I mean, he was coming from a dream scenario in Los Angeles. So, like, if I'm the Lions and Fields or Lance are there, you know, I understand why Brad Holmes, of course, comes from the Rams, traded for Jared, and that this team is rebuilding. But I just really think you got to take the quarterback when he's available.
Yeah, quarterbacks are the most valuable commodity in sports. That much is for sure. But, Matt, if the Broncos don't take a quarterback at pick number 9, where should they be looking? And does that mean they have to find one at some point during the draft later?
Yeah, I do think so. And I'm all aboard on Denver trying to move up in this draft, especially if Trey Lance starts to fall. I think he's a perfect fit for what they want to do in Denver. He's great with the run game. He has the arm strength for the elements. He has the athleticism. He has the maturity. And I do think that would be a very interesting situation with him pushing out Drew Lock and having all the weapons of Cortland Sutton coming back, a good offensive line. If they can't get someone in the first round field, I think it goes to that round 2 discussion. The problem is we're coming on here every day and saying, well, this team can wait till round 2. 18 teams can't wait till round 2 to draft a quarterback because someone will jump in to take these guys. So while we like Davis Mills from Stanford and his arm talent, even though he only started 11 games, and we like Kyle Trask and his accuracy, and we like the arm strength of Kellen Mond, teams are aware that there is not a 9th starting quarterback in this draft class. And so as early as we're going to see the top 5 go, we're going to see a run on quarterbacks 6, 7, and 8 to start the second round or maybe even late first. So if you're Denver or any team picking after them, you're running into a situation where everyone knows that you need that guy if you don't take one in the first round.
Dialing it back to 7 through 9 for a second of those teams, I wonder if they're all desperately hoping that Atlanta takes Kyle Pitts at pick 4 for 2 reasons. 1, it pushes the quarterbacks down the board for them to potentially draft.
Yep.
2, if somebody like, I don't know, Bill Belichick and the Patriots wants to call up to try to acquire a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields, that price tag just went up because you've got 2 available rather than 1. Speaking of trades, we have a big one that took place earlier on today. And coming up next, the Chiefs are making moves.